The Australian Open is just around the corner, and fans can't wait to see their favorite back in action after so long. Many major names in tennis will be there, and some like Novak Djokovic will also be surprising us after being absent last year. Novak's a controversial figure everywhere, but especially in Australia, what with his COVID vaccination status. Today we'll discuss how Novak's visit could fare, plus all things Australian Open. First up, Novak Djokovic was in Australia last year, until he wasn't. Novak's relationship with the Australian Open is the mirror image of a toxic relationship, a mix of love and hate. He's been a champion there, considering how this guy's won not once, not twice, but a grand total of 9 times. Yes, a 9-time champion. But look what's come of it. It all turned sour a while back. He arrived in Australia on January 5th, 2023. Now, keep in mind that COVID has been messing with our lives since 2020, and it was very high around that time. Because of that, the country, like many others, had mandatory vaccinations for international arrivals, unless there's a medical exemption of sorts. Now, everyone knows one thing. Novak is an anti-vaxxer. He's talked about it many times and refuses to get vaccinated against the virus. Novak thought that he could easily enter Australia because 2 panels associated with Tennis Australia and the Victorian state government had allowed him an exemption because the star had already been infected by COVID-19 just the previous month. Let's just say that was one big misunderstanding. For the Australian government, previous infection with the virus is no excuse for an exemption from the vaccine. Guess what happened to the player when he entered the country? He was taken to the Park Hotel, a place that's also used as a detention center for refugees. Soon, a judge ruling canceled his initial visa, and he was asked to leave. He tried to challenge the decision, but to no avail. Up next, he was hopeful of getting it overturned for 2023. While the tennis star left the country last year, wishing everyone else the best of luck, he knew he would play this year, no matter what. Australian Immigration Minister Hawke knew the sacrifices that Australia had made to keep itself safe from the global pandemic. The Prime Minister knew it was right. Fans especially supported it. We've got more on this part in a bit. So it seemed quite improbable that Djokovic would be allowed back in. COVID may not be as widespread as it was, but it's still here. Australia has removed the rule for foreigners to be vaccinated, but we're forgetting one thing. This player has gotten a 3-year visa ban. It doesn't matter if the rules go away, he's still going to get banned, right? But the Serbian still remained hopeful. He said that there have been positive signs from the government, but none of it is official yet. He did tell us that his case was in progress, and he could hope to receive improvements very soon. This all happened 2 months back when Novak also expressed a desire to go back and win the Open for a 10th time. We're thinking about whether one of those positive signs was that Hawke was no longer the immigration minister. Surely that would change things up, and it did. Following up, the visa ban has been overturned. You heard us. The path in the Australian Open has cleared up. The new immigration minister, Andrew Giles, overturned the ban, meaning that Djokovic was gonna get his visa, and he did. We're sure that was great news for him, seeing as he loves the country. After all, it's the one that gave him his best success. Even the head of Tennis Australia supported the overturn, saying, "I know Novak wants to come and play and to get back to competing." As for fans, there are many who have cheered the decision, but others aren't so happy. The overturn has caused an uproar among people who have gathered outside his hotel in Australia and in Serbia. We get it. Australia has had to face some of the strictest impositions during lockdowns, and now a man can just waltz in without being vaccinated because he's some great tennis player? Of course they're mad, and we think their anger will only worsen in the coming days. Leading up to the players' big game in Melbourne Park, we can expect to see some ruckus caused by protesters at the game. Everyone knows it's coming. If nothing else, Djokovic's surely going to be booed a lot. Even the game administration knows it, which is why they've also laid out some ground rules so that such incidents are avoided. Now for the big one. Fans who boo the star will be kicked out. That's the rule. Fans have been warned against booing the star, let alone doing anything worse. Authorities maintain that they'll be kicked out of Melbourne Park if they don't comply. The rule came from Open Tournament director Craig Tiley, who said if they disrupt the enjoyment of anyone else, boom, they're out. He didn't want such fans to come, so he asked all attendees to be respectful of the players present. Besides, it's not that all fans are against him either. In fact, the player received a very warm welcome from people at Adelaide International last week, which he also won. His ticketed match against Nick Kyrgios is going to be his first one for the Open, and the match is already sold out. So for anyone who is planning to come just to protest, you might have to give your ticket away. Not to mention, Australia is changing many rules this year. A major announcement by Tennis Australia reveals that players contesting this year's Open don't have to report any positive COVID-19 results. That's right, you can have COVID and continue to play. Well, look how the tables have turned. The confirmation came directly from Chief Executive Craig Tiley just this Monday. He says that the AO isn't imposing any testing rules on players. At the same time, he said that anyone who's feeling unwell should stay home, but still, that means nothing. Uplifting this rule can prove catastrophic for everyone. We hope all goes well at the Open. Speaking of the Open, what are the ATP rankings for this year? We'll tell you, not right. That's what what they are, let's take a look at the ATP rankings. Before we move on, we just want to tell you something. Don't judge a book by its cover, because that's exactly what these rankings have reminded us of. Now, at first glance, the ATP rankings give insight into the hierarchy of the tennis world, but everyone seems to be forgetting some important things. Wimbledon is at the heart of tennis, except last year, it was stripped of ATP and WTA ranking points after the All England Club placed a ban on players from Russia or Belarus because of the war in Ukraine. Obviously, not counting Wimbledon had a huge impact on the overall rankings. If they had been considered, 21 of these top 30 players would be in very different positions today. Some movements might matter less, but Nick Kyrgios is one of the players most adversely affected by the ban. The Australian player played the Wimbledon final against Novak Djokovic. Djokovic won that, but just Nick's run to second place would see his position shooting high up the charts had he gotten those points. He would have ended up at number 11 instead of the 22nd rank he holds right now. That's a huge jump. Instead of being in the top 15, the player's near the edge of the top 25. He's also one of the first players to point out that he should be ranked higher because of Wimbledon. Moving on, what about the Universal Tennis Rating? The Universal Tennis Rating is normally a more accurate picture of the tennis hierarchy. It considers not just the strength of the opponents, but also the player's last 30 matches within 12 months and games won. According to that, Nick has finished as number 2 in the world. Going from number 22 to 2 in the ATP, now that's a massive difference right there. He was only surpassed by Novak in the top spot. Kyrgios expressed his disappointment in the system, saying that it's based on consistency in how much you play, not skill and form. Speaking of Djokovic, he was the Wimbledon champion of 2022. He would have easily gotten among the top positions had those points been considered. Instead of number 5, he would be on number 2, just 18 points behind Carlos Alcaraz. In fact, had it not been for the whole Australian Open fiasco, he could have easily finished number 1 for the 8th time, beating his own record. If only he had just gotten vaccinated, man. If only. You see, it wasn't just the Australian Open that he lost as a result of his anti-vax status. It was also the US Open 2022. It was the first time since 2004 that the player didn't compete in 2 major tournaments. He also had to withdraw from other games, namely the Miami Masters and Indian Wells. Both of them together could have easily handed the star 2,000 points. Finally, it's all just unfair. Say what you will about this man's personal life. We get it. He's made some questionable decisions, but you can't deny the skill. He's the best of the best in tennis today. It's like Taylor Fritz said, take him out of the game and you have a bunch of 20 players that can all easily beat each other any day. But Djokovic, you know he's gonna dominate. After taking the crown for the ATP finals yet again, Djokovic himself said that he thought of himself as the best player in the world. No rankings could affect this man's confidence, and we think that's all that matters. His mentality is what's really gotten him to this point. It doesn't matter who's opposite him. It doesn't matter whether he's playing on grass. It doesn't matter what the weather's like or what his age is. His mentality is consistent. He is going to win, and he does win. So seeing him at number 5 in the ATP rankings is really just unfair. Now in the Open, he's the undisputed favorite. There's a reason the admin is pulling such strings to get him to play. They know he deserves it. As for Kyrgios, despite being number 22 in the rankings, he's the fan favorite at the Open this year. Nick and Novak are 2 of the highly anticipated players at the AO. The rankings, with respect, simply lie. That's a wrap on this video. Do you think Djokovic will take the crown once more at the Australian Open? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.